And that, it's sort of the dark side and the light side of the force.
Yeah.
The dark side is very powerful. That spite that you're talking about.
I live off of spite.
The deep, bitter spite. It can get you a long way.
It definitely can. The power of spite. Not enough motivational speakers talk about that. But I'm literally fueled by spite. A lot of my reasons for success are just because I know it makes somebody else mad.
I'm going to take a wild guess. I have never met you before this interview. Have I, Ryan?
You have not.
I'm going to take a wild guess that you are a stand-up comedian.
I am.
Yes! Stand-up comedians know how to use spite to their advantage.
Yes.
And there's so much of it backstage, just from what I'm told. I am not a stand-up comedian. I cannot speak from experience. But from what I'm told, you navigate a labyrinth of bitter anger.
Yes.
In your ascent to the top.
It's the weirdest thing. I've actually taken acting classes, and the world of acting was so different when I first jumped into it because everybody was just so damn nice. And everybody was there to help each other out, and there was where it was, if you stand in the back in a circle of comedians smoking cigarettes, you'd never even realize they were friends with each other.
I worship at the altar of stand-up comedy. I don't know how they navigate the career or how they do it on a nightly basis, especially these days. When you talk to stand-up comedians these days who talk about Benny Hill, when he was a stand-up comedian, could take the same 10, 15-minute routine across the country and make a living at it.
Yep.
Stand-up comedians these days, if they test out one joke in one bar, in one corner of the universe, someone puts it on Instagram, and they can never tell that joke again, ever, unless they want somebody to say, we heard that one, we saw it on Instagram already. It is so hard to me to think that comedians these days, how much they have to write and how much they have to come up with, and they don't have any opportunity to test the material without it getting exposed and brought into the public light. I don't know how they do it.
I don't know how you do what you do, because I'm writing 5 minutes, generally 5 minutes at a time of just silly, dumb thoughts that I have. But you're, as a writer, the kind of writing that is creating whole worlds, and you're basically creating a universe out of your mind, and that is more staggering to me than anything else. So I from my side, I respect that way more than my silly wiener jokes that I tell on Saturdays.
But I don't have to deliver it myself and walk the tight wire in front of a live audience and get the reactions in order to not get booed off stage for those 5 minutes, and that's pure terror. To me.
Yeah, I can see why people don't want to do it, but because you have to be a little bit dead inside, and that's really how it works.
It's funny when we talk about this, because you played I'm not going to call it a villain, but in Dead Poet Society, you were not the hero of that movie. And I was talking to my daughter last night. I said I was going to be able to interview you, and she's 16 years old and has, she's seen Dead Poet Society like 5-6 times. And, that movie was made 30 years ago, so it still holds. And when I told her I was interviewing you, she knew exactly who you were, knew the character, and she was going, oh my God, that's so cool, Dad. As somebody who plays the pseudo heel in a movie, does that carry with you? Do people still come up to you and go, or do they even comment about the character? Like they think it's possibly real and possibly who you are?
Yes, I have people who recognize me and they go, oh, you were that guy. I also get some people who just are looking at me. They think they might have seen me before, and for some deep-seated reason, they don't like me. They don't like me, and they don't know why. And then they realize, and then when I tell them, they go, right, I hated you in that movie. That said, I feel very fortunate to have played such a definitive character in the film that so many people do recognize. It was a great character. It was a well-written character. It was a well-directed character. I did my part to bring him to life, but I feel very fortunate to have been given that role. The only moment when it really caused me any grave concern was when the poets, all 7 poets, got together in New York City to appear on a talk show, and shortly after its release in theaters. And that night, after we did the talk show taping, we said, let's sneak out to a New York movie theater and watch our movie with a New York movie audience. So we all went out to this little movie theater. I don't know where it was, somewhere in New York. And we sat, all 7 of us, in the back. And we were watching the movie, and it was packed. And people were into it. And it got to the end, and I told on everybody, I faked everybody out, and and Gail, who plays Nuwanda, decked me in the face. And this New York audience leapt to its feet with their fists in the air, like, kill him! At which point I turned to the other 6 guys and I said, I think we should go because I don't know what these people are going to do to me if we walk out together. But that said, I've played a lot of bad guys since then. I've played a lot of guys that you kind of want to deck. I get hit in the face by Ryan Philippe in The Way of the Gun. I get hit in the face by Mystique in X-Men 2. I play a kind of a hateful character in Jack Reacher. I play a hateful, racist sheriff's deputy in Clint Eastwood's The Mule. I play a hateful, I've sort of made somewhat of a career of being someone that you just vaguely don't like. That's that redhead freckle-faced kid. I don't really like him. I've gotten some work off of that, so I can't really knock it.
I had a chance to talk to Dylan the other day, and we were talking about, he does a lot of the Tom Cruise movies where he's on the set, and for the last one where Tom Cruise is attached to the plane, and they're just flying him around. I mean, actually in the air, hundreds, thousands of feet up, hooked to the plane. And we talked about how thorough that set is. And you had discussed the stunts and everything on that set. And why don't you describe like how this process works when you're looking at the main actor, in this situation going, why isn't a stuntman here? But you said it's so thorough that you don't even think about it.
Well, yeah, and Tom Cruise is a special case because he just absolutely lives to do work like that, to thrill an audience with doing outrageous stunt work himself. That said, I have never seen anyone engage in a more serious conversation or process of safety protocol before he straps in, locks in, and does it himself than him. It's amazing to watch him and the stunt team work these things out, test everything to within an inch of its life, and then he puts it on and he trusts it and goes for it. And like you just said, watching him take off and land while hanging onto the side of a C-130 aircraft over and over again to get the takes just the way he wanted them with no fear is something. And he probably would admit if he was here that he does experience fear or nerves before he does stunts like that. But watching him the way he prepares that stuff, it's been a great example for me for how safety should be handled when you're doing something dangerous on a set.
Now, you were in a movie called Way of the Gun, and you had a scene with Taye Diggs, and you have a gun, and we talked about it a little bit. Why don't you describe that scene a little bit to me?
Yeah, Taye Diggs plays a baddie, and I play a doctor, and the situation gets tense between me and Taye Diggs and Ryan Philippe and Benicio del Toro, and I have a gun in my doctor's bag, and in a moment of pure opportunism, I reach into my bag, grab the gun, put it to Taye Diggs under his chin, and pull the trigger and kill him. It's very sudden, it's very abrupt, it's very violent. And that was an extensive conversation about how we were going to do that. And ultimately, it was made a lot simpler by the fact that I was using a plugged gun. I was using a gun that the barrel was literally blocked.
Now, safety on sets, that's become a big issue lately. And the sad thing is in the last 20, 30 years, we've lost some actors and directors to really, how can I say it, unnecessary accidents. Now, the safety on the set for that movie, I mean, like gun control, how does that normally work out?
Well, I don't want to speak for how other sets are run, but I do want to say, you say 20 or 30, you mentioned what a long film career I've had. I started doing theater in the early 80s, and in 2022, we're at the 40-year anniversary of the Twilight Zone helicopter accident under John Landis that, killed Vic Morrow and those 2 child actors, Renee and Micah. I remember that. That was 40 years ago. it was 11 years after that, in 93, that Brandon Lee died in a gun accident on set. And I remember that because I was in college then. And that was, an unspeakable tragedy. Then 6 years ago in 2016, Sarah Jones died on a set because safety conditions were not established and because the lines were crossed that should not have been. And now here we are in 2021, and Helena Hutchins dies in a gun accident in the most tragic way conceivable. So this has got to end. I mean, we talked about this, Jeff, that we're not saving lives here. Making movies is not a life or death situation. It should never be, ever. And it's now, we're in year 40 of senseless human tragedies on film sets because safety protocols are not being honored. And as for who's responsible for those lapses, I'm not a judge, and I don't have a jury sitting off to my left here, or my right here, or whatever, and it's innocent until proven guilty in this country. But this has got to stop. So I'm so glad that The Rock recently said that he's no longer going to use live ammo on his sets or live firearms. That scene you talk about, I have to grab the gun out of the bag. It was a revolver, and put it up to under the chin of my fellow actor. Now, there could have been ways in which they could have said, well, we'll do charges, or just, no. I held it there. I faked pulling the trigger. I pulled my hand back to simulate the motion of a gun going off. And in post, they added a bang and a flash, and it looks great. You can go watch it right now. It looks as good as any gunshot you can see in any movie. There's no reason why you can't put the onus on actors to perform guns in the same way that actors perform lines and characters and other types of actions. There's just no reason why you can't. Anyway, it's very upsetting.
I mean, this isn't the issue. This is hard because whether you are pro-gun or anti-gun, in the end, we have to respect the weapon, no matter how you feel about the topic. And I was in the Army a long time ago, and they made it very clear, never point a weapon in somebody else's direction, whether it's loaded or not. And what we're having here is, it seems like a lack of respect of what possibly could happen. Now, in this movie that just got done, and I'm not going to comment on it. I mean, there are a lot of civil cases. And the one thing great about the law is when you get sued over something and somebody has to write a bad check, change will happen. Change doesn't happen based on emotions. It's based on liability, because films can't be shot without insurance policies. And insurance policies will say, we will, if you have a gun, you have to, I guarantee now there'll be a gun clause in there that says, you will not point if there's a live round. We won't cover this. If there's this, we won't cover it. This, and I think that liability will change the way we deal with these sets from because you're talking millions and millions of dollars, and now it's a big issue. I promise you, everyone who's writing an insurance policy right now is now adding that clause in there. How a live round gets on a set, I don't.
What also seems unnecessary, because I remember the first time I saw a video on the internet, because the internet's a horrible place, of somebody actually getting shot, right? And it looked nothing like how it looks in the movies. Like, it was almost like sterile in a way. And just the background that I have, I have a degree in digital design, and one of the first things you learn to do is to do gunshots, like to fake gunshots, lasers, that kind of stuff. It's literally one of the easiest things to do in post. So and it looks better. He's absolutely right. So to have an actual gun on set is so unnecessary,
or at least one that was used to fire. I mean, if it's just a basic wooden prop, I think you do this. Now, we have about a minute or two left, Dylan, and we were talking about guns and things like that. And you had mentioned that you don't have a gun in the house, not because you are pro or anti-gun, but for this specific reason. And what you were telling me a certain reason why you could never have a gun in your house.
Well, I've like you say, I'm not pro or anti-gun. I don't have a gun. I have friends who have firearms or many firearms. I am pro